well. So don't worry if you know somebody who wanted to be here and couldn't, and these will be publicly available. So I am going to kick us off by talking about the intent of the program. And so this program grew out of the NIFA Climate Change Core Team. And part of our goal was to expand the capacity of USDA Climate Hubs and Cooperative Extension Service to reach farmers, ranchers, and forest landowners, to expand efforts in underserved and underrepresented communities, particularly to support informed science-based decision-making regarding climate-smart agriculture and forestry practices. So what that means is we're providing federal funding to support cooperative extensions, collaboration with climate hubs and other partners, and hoping to enable these climate extension partnerships in training the next generation of agriculture and natural resource professionals, scientists, and informed citizens. So these were our main goals in creating this RFA. And I'm going to now turn it over to Maurice Smith to give you a bit more background on the climate hubs and on cooperative extension before me coming back to give you a few more details. So Maurice, would you like to take it away?
Absolutely. And hello to everyone out there. We are so excited about this program, but I'll just go ahead and get deep down into the information. So when we talk about the USDA Climate Hubs, some of you are probably wondering, what about the climate hubs? What's the significance behind it? Why is it included? What are we talking about? So the climate hubs, unique collaboration across USDA agencies, a very strong focus. They're led and hosted by the Agriculture Research Service and Forest Service, and is located at 10 regional locations with contributions from many agencies, including NRCS, which is the Natural Resources Conservation Service, the Farm Service Agency, Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, and Risk Management Agency. As you can see noted on here, the 5 hosted by ARS from that. So looking at the vision is robust, healthy agricultural production and natural resources under increasing climate variability and change. And then you go into the mission of the climate hubs is to develop and deliver science-based regional specific information and technology to agriculture natural resources managers. It also focuses on the important concept of research and science information synthesis, as well as tool development, technology exchange, stakeholder education, outreach, and engagement. So the USDA climate hubs play a great important role in terms of climate change. Next slide. So when we're talking about the climate hubs as well, you can see in the in this map, which is very good to have, the actual regions in which I mentioned before. And with those climate hubs, certain activities come about, which I've noted on the tool and technology development, your science and data, technical assistance and training is also embedded with the climate hubs, as well as that outreach, education, and engagement component. So when we talk about providing outreach and education to farmers, ranchers, and forest landowners on science-based risk management, or also engaging our stakeholders and partners in this innovation and interactive ways to help lower barriers to adaptation, manage risk, and even enhancing rural productivity. So going in reference, including with the slide, climate impact areas. And I want to focus also on the topical areas, which these are some of the areas, for example, going into extreme weather, the drought, the flooding, seasonal shifts, disturbances, also focusing on carbon, climate science, crops, communities, economics, so on, was also included with those topical areas. Next slide. So now you get a chance to, I mean, not physically meet the regional hub directors, but virtually during this webinar, you can see from those regional hubs, these are the contacts information, and then you can also find out further information below at that link, climatehubs.usda.gov. If you're just curious of who's involved, who's working, which agency with these climate hubs, and then certain locations. Next slide. So when we talk about the cooperative extension system, the cooperative extension system is a non-formal educational program for some of you that are maybe not familiar with extension, and it was implemented in the United States designed to help people use research-based knowledge to improve their lives. And this service is provided by the state's designated land-grant universities, which we'll talk about in shortly. So when you can see on the slide, the Smith-Lever Act, you know, those acts and those laws were put in place for this. And the extension system is focused on I always note on this, even in my former years in my doctoral program, you have that three-legged seat or three-legged chair or seat, or in analogy, in a sense that is funded when the federal, state, and county. If you look at that three-leg approach of USDA, NEFA, the state legislators, and the local board of supervisors and commissioners. And in extension today, offices in or near most of the nation's 3,140 counties, parishes, and bureaus, and coordinate 2.8 million volunteers as well. Next slide. So going from that cooperative extension system slide into this one, the land grant universities and college play a very important and critical role in that whole branch. And when you're talking about that um, the three components, which I said, the state, federal, and local, then you also think about three other components, as in research, teaching, and extension. And our land grant universities and colleges, as seen on this map, going from an 1862 to an 1890 and a 1994, showcase various programs and their community outreach into uh, certain areas like nutrition, agriculture, um, community viability, 4-H youth development. And the land grant institution or university of higher education in the United States is designed by a state to receive the benefits of the MORE Act of 1862 and 1890, just for the purposes of that. And you can find out more information about land grant universities and colleges within this link provided on our agency's website. All right, and I will turn it back over to Katie. Thank you.
Thank you, Maurice. So I am going to get into some of the nitty-gritty and the details of this program. So the program priority area title, as we already said, is Extension, Education, and USDA Climate Hubs Partnership. And the program area priority code within AFRI is A1721. So if you want to do a quick word search within the AFRI RFA for this program, it might be easiest to use that program code. So as far as proposed budgets, we are looking at about $1.5 million per project for project periods of 3 to 5 years. And we're hoping to make approximately 7 awards. That will be depending on the quality of the proposals as well as the final budget that we have to work with. Project types that we are accepting are extension projects or integrated extension and education projects. And I will go over the eligibility for those two types of projects in the coming slides. Grant types that we are looking for include standard and phase grants. Within phase, we have strengthening standard and new investigator type. Our application deadline for 2021 will be July 22nd at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. and then October 6th, 2022 at 5 p.m. again, Eastern Standard. The primary contact for this area is Dr. Megan O'Rourke, and we have her contact information there. We'll also have it on our last slide with the contact information for all of the national program leaders associated with this area. And then also to the right here, I have a picture of the AFRI request for applications, and there is a link there as well. So getting into some of the details here, the basics, as far as what you can do when applying to this grant, you can't exceed the funding limit. You have to fit within that 3 to 5 year time frame. You have to be an extension or integrated extension and education proposal, be standard or phased, and then be submitted on time. So make sure that you have all of those things in order. Those are the most basic things that you need to do. As far as details, the application needs to fit with our stated priorities. So in this orange box, I'm showing our program area priorities, which are to provide effective, translatable, and scalable approaches to address climate change through regional partnerships, and then to look at long-term socioeconomic impacts of climate change, including net zero emissions agriculture, working lands adapted to climate change, a diverse workforce, specifically related to communication and management of working lands, and then also climate justice, particularly opportunities and burden sharing. Then we're also requiring collaboration with USDA climate hubs and also collaboration with Extension. Any proposals need to meet the needs of one or more USDA climate hubs region. We are looking for proposals that foster trust in climate-smart agriculture and forestry, and also those that consider environmental justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So eligibility, this is always a big question that we get. Who can apply? And there are a lot more details in this if you want those in part 3 of the AFRI Foundational RFA, and that is on page 80 of the RFA. So I'll give you an overview here. So if you're looking to submit an integrated extension and education proposal, the eligible applicants for that are colleges and universities. And then in the green box here, I have the official AFRI definition of a college or university, which is an educational institution in any state that admits students having a secondary school education, is legally authorized in the state to provide higher education, awards higher degrees for educational programs, is a public or nonprofit institution, and is accredited by nationally recognized agency or association. And so research foundations maintained by a college or university are eligible under this as well. Also, 1994 land grant institutions are eligible, and Hispanic serving agricultural colleges and universities are eligible in this portion as well. If you're looking at an extension only proposal, the eligibility opens up a little bit. So state agricultural experiment stations, colleges and universities as previously defined, university research foundations, other research institutions and organizations, federal agencies, national laboratories, private organizations and corporations, individual US citizens, nationals, or permanent residents, or you could do a group of any of the above. So you could get 2 of those together to apply for an extension grant. So for instance, an extension unit acting on its own, not through a university, could apply for an extension only grant, but would need to collaborate with a college or university to do an integrated grant. So what does the eligibility mean for climate hubs? Because climate hubs might get requests to collaborate from multiple people. So climate hubs can give a letter of support to multiple potential collaborators, and this is actually encouraged to facilitate equity of opportunity. A single climate hub could theoretically receive more than 1 award, but this is very unlikely. It depends on the quality of submissions. It depends on the panel review, because that's how award recommendations are ultimately made. And then we want to ensure a regional balance of who gets awards. Can climate hubs cooperate with one another? Yes, multiple climate hubs could cooperate together on a single proposal. So in your application package, a couple little things to note include that you will need letters of support from collaborating USDA climate hubs, from extension partners, and from any other relevant partnerships. Potential other relevant partnerships could include, for example, NOAA Regional Integrated Sciences and Assessment Teams, USGS National and Regional Climate Adaptation Science Centers, Joint Fire Science Program and Fire Science Exchange Networks, and minority serving institutions. And people have brought up in the chat that USDA ethics only allows us to give letters of collaboration, not support. So that is a mistake in this slide, where it should be letters of collaboration, not letters of support. So a couple of the broad emphasis areas that we wanted to emphasize for this program. So these are not requirements, but are rather areas of potential interest. So stakeholder input, getting input from stakeholders on climate change issues, hearing from them on what they need. Human-centered participatory design, formal education, educator training, climate hub fellowships, technical service provider training, climate smart food systems training, programming for underserved groups, supporting civilian climate corps, and anything else that you think is relevant and that you would like to emphasize. So those are just some potential broad areas. So here is our list of program area priority contacts. As you can see, we have quite a few great national program leaders working on this priority area. And I've included their specialization area in orange next to their name. So you can kind of figure out who you might want to talk to. So we have Dr. Megan O'Rourke, specializing in agroecology, Dr. Andre Sybil, specializing in rangeland science, Dr. Lydia Kaumi, specializing in nutrition, Dr. Erica Kistner-Thomas, specializing in biology, Dr. Robin Shoemaker, specializing in economics, Dr. Maurice Smith, specializing in extension and engagement, specifically civic engagement, and Dr. Stephen Thompson, specializing in engineering. And then we also wanted to let you guys know about a grant writing workshop that is coming up in June. And this is going to be to support Extension and other teams preparing proposals for the AFRI Extension Education and USDA Climate Hubs Partnership program area. That's going to happen on June 9th, 2021. It'll be 3 hours from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Anybody who is eligible to apply for one of these grants is welcome to attend this workshop. It's being hosted, co-hosted by the Extension Foundation, the Extension Committee on Organization and Policy, the National Extension Climate Initiative. And there is a registration link that you can click on, or you can go to this link as well. I'll work on getting that URL posted in the chat. I'm not sure that I can click on it and highlight it right now. I'll work on that. So if you have any further questions, definitely consult the RFA. That's where you'll find pretty much all of the information that I just presented. And also it will have all of the contact information for program staff. And thanks, Bill, for posting the link to the RFA there in the chat. Okay, I'm going to land here on the registration link for a minute. So anyone who wants to jot that down, take a screenshot, or potentially take a photo of it, will get to go ahead and do that. And as soon as I'm done with my presenter mode, I will also copy that and put it in the chat box. But I want to get into the Q&A. So Erica is going to take care of any questions that have come up in the chat feed, and I will take care of any questions that have been entered in the Q&A. And then Maurice, if you could monitor anybody who raises their hand and bring that to our attention, that would be fantastic. And we'll just kind of go around in that order. So Erica, do you have any questions that you would like to address from people to our program staff?
Yes, there's a couple questions that I'd like everyone else's input on that's on our team here. So do we have an estimated date or at least some time frame that we're going to have the workshop, the grant writing workshop? Oh yeah, there it is, June 9th. So The workshop was, what was that, June 9th?
That's correct. It is June 9th, and that is from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And I'm about to put the link in the chat. Okay, there it is. So I will read off a question from the Q&A, and then we'll go back to Erica. So we have a question from Kat. Can tribal land grant extension apply for this grant? Anyone want to weigh in on that?
What was it? Tribal land grants?
This is Megan.
1994, yeah, certainly.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and so 1994s are eligible to apply both for extension-only grants as well as for integrated extension and education grants. Okay, Erica, would you like to read off the next question?
Here's a good question. If multiple proposals are submitted in one state with a climate hub, will you have a unique ranking system?
So I'll take a stab at this. So that would, I think, imply that just different research or extension groups of people may be coming from the same organization and submitting the proposal. I'm going to go on the assumption that that's what was intended by the question. We have not a priori set a specific way to make sure that we wouldn't fund both of those. But again, as Katie said, we do have a priority at NIFA to ensure geographic distribution.
Okay, great. I will ask the next question, which is from Jeff. Is it best to engage both extension and climate hubs in a proposal, particularly if they are regional in scope, since it may be hard to engage every extension office in several states? Any of our national program leaders want to take that one?
Could you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Of course. Is it best to engage both extension and climate hubs in a proposal, particularly if they are regional in scope?
Yes. So, well, extension can be with a little e. It's not necessarily required to be with the cooperative extension system, but we are requiring a partnership between a climate hub and extension activities, if that answers sufficiently.
Okay, Erica, do you have the next question from the chat? Oh, okay, go ahead, Eric.
I'd add a couple things to that. Sure. So it would be virtually impossible to involve every extension office, even in one state. There's an office in every county, almost. We would not expect every single county to be involved or listed, in an application. The point is, and the intent was for the cooperative extension service in the state or states to collaborate with the climate hubs. So, perhaps the contact in extension is an extension program leader. Perhaps it's a state specialist, but not necessarily would we expect every single county office to be named or included in the actual write-up of a proposal.
Great, thank you, Eric. Erica, do you have the next question from the chat?
let's see. Do we plan to add a hub for an 1890 region or institution? I guess we'll leave that to some of the hub folks. I would think not at the moment. There wasn't a plan. Is there any plans to create more climate hubs? I haven't heard that.
NIFA isn't in charge of creating
Right.
climate hubs, so that wouldn't be part of this RFA opportunity. Can I return to a question about the tribal extension system and whether they can apply? I don't know if we answered that correctly. Erin Riley here at NIFA piped up to kind of maybe help us answer that question more correctly, because Erin was wondering maybe the question implied, can extension agents who work for tribes apply? So they're working for the tribal government, not working necessarily for a 1994 institution. And in that case, the grant type that they could apply for as the lead PI would be the extension only grant type. Now they could be part of a collaborating team in the integrated extension and education. They just couldn't be the lead. I hope that clarified things.
Awesome, thank you, Megan. And so we have another question about scope, which is, can projects span beyond one state, or can they only occur in one state but involve regional groups such as a hub or NOAA? And my understanding is that they can span beyond one state, but if any of the NPLs would like to weigh in on that, that would be helpful.
So the question was, can they do more than one region?
Can the project span more than one state?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I think we maybe expect that many or most of the proposals will span more than one state at the funding level that we're offering.
This is Eric. Given that we're looking to support the collaboration and partnership between regional hubs, that would imply, and we would expect, the regional approach to apply to the states that are involved. So one state out of a hub region that might have 10 states is not really the intent of what we're trying to do. We would expect or hope that multiple states within the hub region would be involved. It doesn't necessarily require that every single one of them, given the size of the funding and what your ideas may be, but this is not a one state serving and collaborating with an entire hub region.
Wonderful, thank you, Eric, for your input. Erica, next question.
I got a question about, is there a priority for proposals that include a minority serving institution or reach out to underserved communities? Yes, that is one of the program areas that is a priority. It's not a, now correct me if I'm wrong, Megan, I don't think that's a requirement, but it certainly is something we are encouraging applicants to do, to reach out to underserved communities. You know, a lot, as some of the hubs, like the Southwest Hub mentioned, they work with 1994s, which are Native American colleges, and we also, you know, 1890s historical Black colleges. Of course, many of the hubs work closely with Hispanic serving institutions. All those are game. 4-H is great too. We would encourage that as well.
And again, if they are, they fall within our strengthening institutions, then you can apply as a strengthening grant if a strengthening institution is the lead PI on the grant, and that allows for some special funding considerations. We set aside please somebody correct me if I'm wrong, approximately 15% of AFRI funding money for strengthening grants.
I think this is Eric. I think part of that answer lies in how the applications are reviewed and how decisions are made. NIFA does not participate in the actual review and initial decision making of what a peer review panel does. We find folks to serve on a panel. We find a non-NIFA person to be the panel manager. That panel will review the applications with the expectations and requirements in mind that are in the RFA. And then that panel will rank the applications from 1 to whatever, and they will then make a recommendation to NIFA in terms of what should be funded. I would say in the vast majority of the programs and panel recommendations, NIFA does not vary much at all from what a panel recommends. Otherwise, there'd be no point in having a panel. Other federal agencies operate a little differently when they evaluate or consider panels, but what the panel recommends to us is pretty much what we're going to do. So if a panel is looking at an application and taking into consideration all the requirements, all the priority areas, minority serving institutions, that may get evaluated higher and ranked higher simply because of the inclusion of all of those components, but not because of one item such as includes a minority institution.
But again, if a minority institution is the lead institution in that ranking process, there are set aside funds to fund lower ranked proposals that are led by strengthening grant institutions. So it is a bit of a competitive advantage.
Folks, there's been a lot of questions about phase and strengthening, and a lot of these folks have not applied for AFRI before. So because that would take quite a bit of time for us to explain what that is, I'm sending you the link to our webpage that has a Q&A that explains what strengthening grants are. And so those will explain it. Any federal agency is not eligible for the strengthening institutions. That is mainly small to mid-sized institutions with current enrollment of 17,500,000 graduate and undergraduate. So small to mid-sized universities, minority serving institutions. And by that, we mean 50% minority serving. And that includes Hispanic serving institutions. And if you want a list of that, I can provide that. 1890 institutions, 1994s, and also EPSCoR states. So if any of you have applied to NSF grants, you'll know what EPSCoR states are, and the current list is on that webpage. So those are what we mean by strengthening grants. And those are, right, when the panelists are together and they do the ranking, those states do get an edge when we're ranking. So they will get a little preferred funding over those that are not. But the lead PD has to be from a minority serving institution. You can't partner with a Hispanic serving institution. They have to be the lead on the project. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. I also have a lot of questions in the Q&A box about whether the focus is only on agricultural working lands or whether the project can span issues in urban areas, including affordable housing, energy efficiency, climate justice, etc.
We have not maybe discussed that explicitly. I mean, my gut reaction is to say no, because USDA is typically for agriculture and forestry, rural communities. But maybe especially Eric, somebody more experienced, please chime in if I'm wrong here.
No, I would, this is Eric, I would concur. USDA is about agriculture as broadly defined, and working lands, be they forests, rangelands, croplands, etc., and not focused in terms of what we're doing in urban areas. Additionally, the priority of this administration and the department is climate smart agriculture and forestry. Now, the whole picture gets a little cloudy when one begins to think about and talk about urban agriculture, which is a whole new arena for the department. And I would say, in part, it comes down to what the collaboration focus is and priorities, meaning the Climate Hub and Extension working through and figuring out, and as partners jointly decide on the areas of emphasis. But I would say, generally speaking, we are not focused on urban areas.
And that being said, you know, there are certainly like indoor agricultural programs. There are some urban agricultural programs. We've had listening sessions about expanding the traditional scope of USDA in that direction. So I'd encourage the person who asked the question to maybe reach out to us directly with your ideas. We can bring that back to REE and give you a more specific answer.
Great, thank you. Erica, do you have any more questions from the chat?
Yeah, more. So there was a question about what one of the things that you could do for when you're writing these proposals. One of the priorities would be a fellowship to work at a USDA climate hub. Now, this does not necessarily mean that you have to have that the fellow has to be a federal employee. They could be housed in a university, but they would need to work. Basically, these are partnerships. You can't have, and I think a lot of people have asked this, is that a university cannot apply for this and then just have simply a letter of support from the hub. They need to be an actual partner in the process. It needs to be clear either way how the university is going to be involved and how the climate hub is going to be involved. And of course, if you're going to have a fellowship, the fellow would probably need to work both with the university as well as the folks at the climate hub to do this work. Does that make sense to everybody? It's a partnership.
Okay, great. Okay, answered that one. So we have a question, when do you anticipate notifying successful proposal teams? So when might people find out if they were successful?
Well, this is Eric. I don't know that we have a specific date, but the proposals are due July 22nd. Then the agency will look to see what we have, will find and hire a program manager who will then find panelists who will then conduct a panel. So it's several weeks after a deadline before the panel meets and makes their recommendations and forwards those to NIFA. So I would say that we're likely to not be making notifications until the latter part of summer. And we would expect to make the awards during this fiscal year, which ends September 30th. So prior to that, we would expect to make the awards. But it'll take several weeks for the panel process and the review to play out after the deadline of July 22nd.
And I would say we are still, because this is a new priority area, we're still in the process of identifying panel managers and panelists. If you are interested in either of those positions, please send one of the MPLs listed your interests and your CV, and we will be able to then consider whether we can include you in this round. But you cannot be applying this round if you're going to be in the panel.
Another good question here, and this has come up several times. Can states or institutions that are in 2 hubs apply as a PI in one and partner with another without jeopardizing that application? So the AFRI rules stand here. So you can apply, you can, so a PD or principal investigator can apply for this grant and then be a co-PD on another one of these for this program. But you can't apply as a partner, so let's say you're at University of California, Davis. You cannot apply as the California University Davis as the leading institute and you as the lead PD partnering with California, and then submitting another one with you as the lead PD partnering with the Southwest and California hubs. Does that make sense? So you can be the lead on, if you're the lead investigator in one, you can be a co on a PD or PI on another one submitted to the same program. But you can't double dip and be the lead PD on 2 separate proposals. Does that make sense to everybody? Those rules are also covered in AFRI. So if you go over the AFRI guidelines, all the AFRI guidelines apply here as well, because this is an AFRI grant.
And Erica, is there any limit to how many applications you can be co-PD on? I think you can be as co-PD on as many as you want.
Yes, as far as I know, there's no limit, but just one as the lead PD. That's it.
Okay, I have a social science question here. So I understand, this is from Jay Arbuckle. I understand that the intent is to focus on extension and/or education rather than research. Would it be acceptable for a proposal to have some social science research, such as surveys and focus groups for needs assessment purposes? For example, to inform design of extension or education programming?
I apologize, I don't have the RFA pulled up in front of me, but isn't one of the bulleted consideration areas, didn't it include needs assessment, some verbiage there?
Yes.
So I think, I think one way to look at this is we're not looking for a lot of academic paper output necessarily. So I think you can do a needs assessment without necessarily having to publish it per se. But of course, we understand academic institutions, you do work on grants, you do work also in your lab on other things, and you put that all together.
Yeah, and as a social scientist,
Eric, I agree
go
that
ahead, Eric.
a needs assessment may involve using research methods in terms of impartiality, random samples, or whatever. But a needs assessment is not testing a hypothesis, which is what we do in research. So you use the same procedures, but that doesn't turn a needs assessment into research.
Great, thank you. Erica?
Let's see, I've got a good question about budgeting. So should the hubs be budgeted to receive some sort of resources, or does that budget apply to non-federal partners? So again, this is a partnership. So the idea here is that you're gonna, if you're a land-grant university or a minority serving institution or whatever, you're gonna wanna partner with a hub and have some type of extension component. So you would have subawards accordingly to how the project is. So if the hubs are going to be supplying climate change information for you or educational components, you would want to, subaward them accordingly. And if you wanted a fellow housed partially at the hub or with your university, you would, budget accordingly. So if you want somebody to do website maintenance, it depends on where you hire them. So I can't tell you how to do your budget, but yeah, this is a working partnership. So you would probably want to make sure that depending on how things go, you want to partial out your subawards accordingly. Megan, do you have anything to add there?
Yes, I totally confirm everything you just said, Erica. We expect like true partnerships without sharing money are questionably whether they're true partnerships or not.
Right. Again, we don't want the university extension folks or the hubs to just kind of be a tack on. And this is just a one-way thing. We really want this to be a collaborative, interdisciplinary program. And of course, the hubs, we list other federal agencies. You can expand your partners. You can work with elementary schools here. You can work with 4-H. You can work with other federal agencies. We're not limiting you there, but the caveat here is you do need to have the land grant university involved, university extension, and you need to have the hubs involved.
Great, thank you. We have a question from an anonymous attendee. Can funds be used to establish demonstration sites for training, i.e. on a university or extension research farm?
I'm thinking on the fly here. We haven't discussed this specific idea. I don't think it goes against anything that is in the RFA. So I think that would be certainly under consideration in terms of the value for your buck kind of thing.
Got it, thank you. Erica, next question.
I have a comment about the grant writing workshop. So with the grant writing, with developing teams that are working on similar topics in the same region to strengthen an AFRI proposal. In other words, would it be to have a workshop where it would also have a networking session in a sense, so we could find suitable collaborators with extension or a USDA climate hub?
So NIFA is not organizing this workshop. I think it seems like a great idea. So I'd suggest reaching out we have the link for this workshop in the chat. And so I'd suggest reaching out to the organizers and suggesting that as they put the agenda together. We also encourage you, of course, to reach out directly to the list of Climate Hub leadership, extension organization leaderships, and to try to create those networks as soon as possible, maybe get that going even before, say, that June 9th date.
Okay. Got another question here. Will proposals focusing on the social aspects of climate change be acceptable? Yes, this is an interdisciplinary program. So of course, we're going to want some social scientists looking at the economics as well as behavioral changes in folks as well. So yes, that is certainly a good area to go towards, because these are, again, education and extension program focused.
Okay, I have a question about collaboration. Can a consortium of 5 or 6 1890 institutions across a couple of climate hubs submit as one entity? And if you're collaborating across a couple of climate hubs, would you need letters of collaboration from the multiple hubs that they are located in?
Yeah, certainly in the evaluation and paneling process, we're going to look for those supporting letters or letters of collaboration to back up any claims that you make about the network that you have. So I would certainly recommend, if you go with that multi-hub model, that there are letters from all of the participating organizations, if not having them as official co-PDs.
Great, thank you, Megan. And we also had somebody request, a Climate Hub worker request, that we restate that Climate Hubs can only prepare letters of collaboration when they are engaged early, and the proposal intent tracks with the regional hub priorities. So not every regional Climate Hub shares various foci or priorities. So don't assume that, and make sure that you know the priorities of the specific hub that you're working with and that you involve them early on. Erica, do you have more questions from the chat?
Not at the moment. I think I got a break. So I think you've got some more Q&As, right?
Yes, I do. So let me see, we already kind of covered that one. Can you work with multiple hubs on the same proposal? And I think this one could be kind of two questions depending on how you look at it, which could you collaborate with multiple hubs? Yes. I think the other way is, could you have one proposal and kind of try to collaborate with multiple hubs on that, as in apply to each hub? I'm not sure if I'm reading that question correctly.
I don't think that you should present the same ideas in two separate proposals, with the more or less the only difference being it's a different hub partner.
Thank you, Megan. You said that much better than me. I think that was what they were trying to ask. Okay. I've had several questions about when the recording will be made available. So the recording after this session is done will be available to us, at which point we will need to work to produce accurate closed captioning, and then work with our IT team to get that video on YouTube and to get a link available on our AFRI webinar page. And then we have all of the emails of everyone who registered. So I'd be happy to send out that link at that point. It may be a couple of days. Does formal education mean teaching that takes place through a school, K-12, college, university, or would a classroom-based certification program qualify as formal education?
Erica, I don't know if you're pulling up the official definition, but within AFRI, we do have a written definition of what we consider education and what fits that education definition. It is broader than just like curriculum for classrooms. And so a certificate program, I think, does fit that, as long as it's in coordination with a higher education institution. If it's not with a higher education institution, it falls into that informal education, which is extension.
Hey, Katie, I've got some questions about who can apply as the lead PDs and letters of collaboration in terms of who they need to partner with. So according to AFRI, federal agencies, ARS, Forest Service, they can apply as lead PDs in AFRI grants. And we fund quite a few in the past for several different AFRI programs. We fund a lot of ARS research scientists. So you guys can apply. But if you're a Climate Hub applying as the lead PD, right, you need to partner with the university extension person. If you are a university extension link, you're going to need to partner with a hub to apply. Now, and if you're a minority serving institution, that's great. We encourage you to apply, but you do need to partner with both a hub and a land grant university that has some extension capacity. So if you're an 1890 institution, you already have extension there, but you would need to partner with a hub, for example. So lots of different opportunities and ways for people to apply.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions here. A lot related to collaboration. So for instance, would collaboration with a climate hub on an extension-led adult non-formal climate education and service program addressing stewardship of natural resources and having goals of community and ecosystem resilience be eligible under our guidelines? That's a long one. I will pop that in the chat.
Yeah, on a quick read, yes, it obviously needs to be developed into more fleshed out ideas, but in our RFA, we are suggestive of many different areas, including stewardship of natural resources.
Great, thank you.
And community and ecosystem.
A question from Jason O'Brien. Can a project be inclusive of both agriculture working lands and non-rural communities? In other words, if we have a project that serves both urban and rural communities equally, would that count as a valid proposal?
I think that it's similar to a previous question we had about like, what is the scope of the service area for USDA? And so I think it just, like when we're talking about serving urban areas, does it have anything to do with food, for example? You know, if it's going to do with like energy efficiency and high rises, like that's probably stretching a little too far. And so again, I encourage you to reach out to us as an MPL group, and then we can kind of specifically consider your idea and discuss that with you in more detail.
Yeah, definitely.
Urban gardens, food nutrition, security, agroforestry, rangelands, all that stuff is just fair game. If you want to have an urban component, definitely with the urban gardens, that's a great way to get urban areas involved.
Somebody had a question if we expect the recording of the session to be available before the June 9th workshop. I would say certainly. I expect it to be up in less than a week, would be my estimation.
This is Eric. I would like to just address the question of what can be included in different types of programs. This is our expectation, and what we want to fund are collaborations and partnerships, which means the partners, all parties, jointly decide on what's the priority and the objectives. So it's not one party or the other coming up with them and presenting them to the other party. This is joint work and agree on what are the high priorities in terms of climate smart agriculture and forestry.
Thank you, Eric. That really clarifies it for folks. Yes. So again, this is co-production between all the agencies. You really should be working, if you have an idea and you want to have it fully formulated, you should go to the person you might want to partner with immediately to help you formulate the idea. So it should definitely be a joint venture co-production, if you will, from my social scientist colleagues. Really want this to be a collaborative.
Great, thank you. And then Erica, you said that you'd like to answer this question from Allison Live. Are you liking primarily for eligible entities or multiple states in one region to work their regional hub, or is it okay for multiple regions to partner, for instance, New York and California?
I mean, you can do that. So it just depends on what your project is and what your main aims are. If you're interested in specialty crop production in the Northeast, it might behoove you to, for example, partner with the Midwest because the weather is relatively similar and you're going to have similar trends between specialty crops in those regions. So if you want to do a more forest focused, or rangeland, if you want to do rangelands, we have that you could focus between the Northern Plains and the Southern Plains hubs. There's two hubs that do very similar work, and you could partner with states across the North Central and the South Central United States. So you can, there really isn't a limit on who you can partner with as long as it helps you reach your objectives and who your target audience is. Is it rangelands? Is it forestry? Is it specialty crop growers? It just depends. So.
Great, thank you. Would it be possible to fund improvement of a Climate Hub tool, such as Ag Risk Viewer, as part of a proposal because such a tool could be enhanced to improve extension and education?
And I'm sorry, my computer blipped. I couldn't understand the question.
My apologies. I will post it in the chat and reread it as well. Would it be possible to fund improvement of a Climate Hub tool, such as Ag Risk Viewer, as part of a proposal because such a tool could be enhanced to improve education and extension?
I think that comes down to the definition of improve in any particular circumstance. So if it's required to do a lot of research in order to generate the data and parameterize the tool in a way for it to be more accurate, that would fall outside the scope because that would require a research focus. If it's making the website more accessible or something like that, I think that falls into a necessary extension type fundamental activity in order to use that tool. Hopefully that makes a line of where the differentiation between the research and the application of a tool comes.
Great, thank you. Erica, do you have any other questions from the chat?
I do. I have a comment about urban forestry. So would urban forestry, where forest owners are public, would that be eligible? Well, yeah, we do. So the climate hubs cover forestry areas, but I guess I don't know what you mean by urban forestry, because if it's just like landscaping, I'm not sure. If it's forestry that's grown and there's an economic component to it, then sure. But if it's more for, I'm not sure. I don't think this is urban green spaces necessarily. I think that might be, Megan, correct me if I'm wrong. We're not really funding kind of like creating urban green space or infrastructure here in this program, right?
No, I think that.
Or are we?
Oh, go ahead, Eric. Eric's probably the go-to person.
No,
yeah, Eric, go ahead.
In a word, I would say this is not about urban forestry. Urban forestry includes, street trees, publicly owned street trees. It includes forests and parks, et cetera, other kinds of green spaces. I would go back to what we've said earlier about climate smart agriculture and forestry and working lands, and as well as the scope of the service area that really USDA is focused on. Now I know USDA does urban forestry, supports urban forestry through the Forest Service. So my only caveat on all of that is whatever the parties jointly agree on is something that could be written in. I would not, however, do 100% urban forestry application.
And I think this is useful for us to hear the interest level in these kind of urban issues. I think a first question to ask, do the climate hubs also share that interest? Because this has to be a partnership with shared mutual interests. If the answer to that is a yes, and there is a partnership and an objective that you want to go after, I think bring that to us, contact us. And even before we do that, now having heard these questions during this webinar, I think we'll have this internal discussion and be more prepared to answer your questions specifically when they come in.
Great, and I have a quick comment from Dennis Tody from the Midwest Climate Hub. His email was listed incorrectly on our slide as somebody else's email. So I am putting the correct one in the chat right now. I have updated that on our slide that will be sent out, and I will hopefully include a little note about an errata change when we send out the link to that as well. So thank you, Dennis, for notifying me of that. So I don't have any other open questions in the Q&A. Go ahead, Erica.
I think, yeah, I'm sorry for interrupting, Kate. There's a lag, so sometimes I can't tell if I'm talking over you or anyone else, so apologies. I think I did get a question about a clarification for the Civilian Climate Corps and what that is. So Eric or Megan, you guys might be better familiar with that than I am in terms of what. So in the RFA, we have a bullet point as a potential project idea of initiatives to support the Civilian Climate Corps.
Yeah, I would direct the questioner to refer to a January executive order about climate change. That's not the full title, but it's the executive order on climate change issued January 27th. And that's where the Civilian Climate Corps is first mentioned. I'll say that it's a fairly nascent idea, and we're trying to figure out what that means. And so there are, for example, initiatives within the House. There's some proposed bills. So the capacity to kind of try to figure it out, I'd say look at the executive order, look at news that's out there about the topic, and look, there's like a House proposed bill about it. But again, that's not a requirement. It's just an idea. We didn't know how far the idea of the Civilian Climate Corps would be shaped by the time these applications came.
I think a general comment about the Civilian Climate Corps, and again, it's not fully fleshed out, but if you read the executive order, the Climate Corps is essentially about two things. One, creating jobs, and two, developing a climate-informed, climate-ready workforce. So I think that with those two broad ideas, certainly one could include some Civilian Climate Corps ideas in a proposal. And you might come up with the best thing ever in terms of the thinking so far.
Okay, do we have any final
Did we
questions?
answer this question? Did we answer, are RCDs eligible to apply for funding? Did we answer that one?
So that's resource conservation districts, I assume.
Yes, I assume
Right.
so too.
So I would figure out if how you describe yourself generically is one of those eligible applicants, then you would fit. So I would refer you to the eligibility and see where you think you fit.
Let's see. Are international collaborations encouraged as part of this RFA? So generally speaking, for AFRI, yes, you can have some international partnerships, but the lead PD cannot be an international partner. That applies for all AFRI RFAs, and they cannot have a subaward more than 50%. So they can't have a huge subaward taking up the majority of the funding. But yes, you can have an international partner.
But it's very critical that the international work needs to clearly define how it actually contributes to American agriculture.
Correct.
The intent is to improve agriculture, forestry in another country. That doesn't fall within the guidelines of AFRI.
Right. I get a lot of international collaborations because I work on biocontrol. So we'll have pests come in for the United States, and then we'll look for biocontrol agents in the country where they came from. So that's the type of partnership that does make sense when you want an international collaboration when you're dealing with invasive pests.
If anyone has
I
any
think that's
final
all the questions I have.
yeah, please pop them in the chat. We're a little over time, but it looks like we've addressed pretty much all of the questions. So if any of the NPLs have any final comments going forward, please let me know. We'll wait just a minute or two to see if we
This
get.
is Eric. I have one comment for everyone, and that is, if you have a question, call one of the program leaders. We are happy to answer your questions. We don't want to see anybody spend a lot of time and effort on a proposal that is not a fit for the RFA. And so do not hesitate to call. We encourage it, and we take lots and lots and lots and lots of calls over the course of the year. So make contact with us.
Yep, and I just popped the contact information up here as well. Email addresses are listed, but if you look up these names on NIFA's directory as well, you can also get phone numbers to call these people directly. And again, all of these are also listed in the AFRI RFA. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. So the last question was, will the PowerPoints be available with the recording? Yes, it is our intention to make the slide deck of the PowerPoints available, since it has several links in it that can be really useful. You can click on them directly, and those should be ready for distribution before the actual recording. We'll see how exactly that times out, but there's certainly a lot of interest in it, so we'll try and get that done ASAP. Okay, unless we have any final comments from the NPLs, I think we will close this out.
Thanks, everybody. We look forward to seeing your applications and continuing to perfect this program. It's a new program, so it's we're working to make it the best we can.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for your hard work, Katie. That worked well. And Maurice, it was good.
Great job, everyone. Great job.
Yeah,
Oh,
I didn't realize that if
lots
you
of-
weren't a host, you wouldn't be able to see the Q&A.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah, I was
Okay.
like, what? I can't see it, but I was just, it started to populate later, but I was just